What is up, guys? I am back with my series of 5 things I love and 5 things I hate about a particular game. Today, as you can tell, we are talking about Street Fighter 4, a extremely prolific game, kind of responsible for revitalizing the fighting game scene, the game that got me big time into fighting games. A game I'm a big fan of, but I would say not without its share of problems. It does have issues, even though overall I'm a big fan. So first, let's jump into the things that I don't like. Number 1 is DP FADC, Dragon Punch Focus Attack Dash Cancel. That is a mouthful. So you just saw it just there. Basically, if you don't know what it means, basically you can spend 2 meters to make any move canceled into a focus attack, and that includes Dragon Punches. And kind of the problem with this is that Dragon Punches form kind of the core risk-reward of Street Fighter historically, so they're completely invincible, they go through everything, but the downside is if they're blocked, you can eat a big punish. But DP FADC kind of removes that risk because it can make you safe in exchange for 2 meters. They did tone it down a little bit as the kind of versions of Street Fighter 4 went on. It became a little less broken, but for the most part, in general, I just think it's kind of a system that has a negative impact on the game. You know, all of a sudden you can turn something that's supposed to be extremely high risk into something that's relatively safe, and if it connects, you can get so much damage off it. So not a huge fan of DPF ADC. I don't think it ruins the game or anything, but it just kind of bums me out. So let's jump to the next one. Next up, I want to talk about Ultras, kind of the new super powerful move they added for Street Fighter 4. And the thing about Ultras is that unlike Supers, you build Ultra by being hit. So the more damage you do to the opponent, the more Ultra meter you're giving them. So it can be kind of demoralizing when, you know, you're doing really well, you've got a big life lead, but the opponent manages to kind of land an Ultra on you, and then all of a sudden that life lead is completely evaporated. And this is again something that they kind of worked on throughout the different versions. They did make Ultras less damaging, but still I'm just not a fan of the mechanic. I think it makes it a little bit too easy to make comebacks, and it's a little bit too much of a reward for you know, taking damage. If you're doing well, you shouldn't be rewarding the opponent by giving them a big Ultra. So that's number 2. Number 3, I want to talk about Crouch Tech, which, if you don't know, it's basically holding crouch and pressing throw tech, light punch plus light kick. And the reason this is so good in Street Fighter 4 is because if they don't throw you, all you get is a crouching light kick, which is very safe, and some characters can actually combo off it if it hits. So it can make defense kind of this brick wall that feels really, really hard to get through. So it can kind of make it feel like offense is a little bit neutered when you're in the opponent's face and they're blocking. So I'm not a huge fan. I kind of preferred in Street Fighter 5 where if you crouch tech, you actually get a throw. So it's a little bit more risky. Alright, next up, thing I'm not a big fan of in Street Fighter 4 is Focus Attack Crumple. So if you're holding down Focus Attack by holding medium punch and medium kick, you can dash cancel it at any time, which is relatively safe. Or if it hits the opponent and it can absorb an attack before you hit the opponent, you can get a huge combo off it. So to me, this kind of like warps the risk-reward dynamic at neutral when you're trying to play footsies. I think it's kind of too safe of an option, and the reward if you land it is way too big. And a lot of characters have kind of a difficult time dealing with it if they don't have like a really consistent, good focus break attack. So that's kind of my problem with focus attacks in general. And the final aspect of Street Fighter 4 that I hate, that I want to talk about, is dive kicks. Now, I'm not opposed to dive kicks in principle, I just think that in Street Fighter 4, there's way too many of them, and they're all way too good. So characters like Rufus, Yun, Yang, Seth, Evil Ryu, their dive kicks are really strong for a lot of reasons. They're hard to anti-air, they're good at punishing throw techs, which like I said is hard to do, and you can get a lot of damage off them. In Street Fighter 4 it's generally pretty easy to get damage off of stray hits. So if you land a dive kick, you stand to, you know, get a lot of damage off it, and they're very hard to deal with. So that's it for all the things that I hate. Let's jump to something more positive. We're going to talk about 5 things I love about Street Fighter 4. So the first thing I love that I want to talk about is the huge cast. I mean, just look at this character select screen. It's almost absurd how many characters are in Street Fighter 4. By the time Ultra came out, they had added so many, and they're all fun to play. They all feel very different, so you can have just a lot of fun by exploring every character, getting to know all the options. There's very few characters that I think are missing that I would add if it were up to me. Maybe a few of the guys from Street Fighter 3 that didn't make it in, but that's about it. They have so many characters that are all really awesome. And that segues nicely into the number 2 thing that I love, which is that zoning and rushdown are both viable. You might have seen in this video that I did for Street Fighter 5, I talked about how I wasn't a fan of the fact that it's pretty much all rushdown. It's very hard to play kind of a keep away, like long range strategy and get away with it. But in Street Fighter 4, especially in Ultra, it's very, very balanced. You can definitely succeed with both. So I'm a big fan of that, because one of my favorite things in fighting games is the dynamic of a character who really wants to get in versus a character who really doesn't want to let you in. I think those are kind of the most exciting matchups, because the character who really wants to get in is fighting so hard to get through this wall, but then once they finally get in, the damage is just ridiculous. So that's something I love about Street Fighter 4, that you can kind of play either style to suit what you want to do. Next up, one thing that I really love about Street Fighter 4 is that it's easy to learn, but it's hard to master. So a lot of people, myself included, Street Fighter 4 was the first fighting game that we kind of took seriously, and I think the game is relatively easy to pick up for a beginner. You know, you can start out just doing the simple stuff, just doing, you know, a normal move, cancel into a special move. You don't have to do anything crazy. And you can get going with that, and you can get wins online without doing anything very hard. You don't have to incorporate link combos or FADCs or that kind of thing. But then as you learn, all this ridiculous depth kind of unfolds, and you can see all the different things that you can add into your game, and it becomes really fun to kind of track your growth and feel how you're getting better. So I think Street Fighter 4 is very rewarding in that sense. And next up at number 4, I love in Street Fighter 4 how much creativity you can have in combos. So when you're starting out, you can just do easy combos like I was saying earlier, but as you get better and better, you can start doing some really hard stuff. And if you're a training mode monster, which a lot of my friends are, meaning you love to just grind in training mode and try to figure out all the really crazy combos your character can do, Street Fighter 4 really rewards you for doing that. In a way that Street Fighter 5 doesn't really, just because the combo system is a lot more limited in 5, plus combos are a lot easier, so you can kind of get all your B&B combos down really quickly. But in 4, I mean, there were combos that people were learning all the way through the life of the game just because they required a lot of practice. So I think the game's really great for that. You can feel really cool when you do the really hard combos, so that's awesome. I love doing that. The fifth and final thing that I love about Street Fighter 4 is that it is extremely balanced. And in my opinion, Ultra Street Fighter 4 is probably the most balanced Street Fighter game that they've ever made. If you compare it to something like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, in that game, the gap between the really good characters and the really bad characters is immense. And you almost never see the mid and low tier characters winning very big tournaments. But compared to Street Fighter 4, you know, you saw earlier that massive list on the character select screen. You can pick pretty much any of them and you'll stand a chance. Obviously, there's still good and bad matchups, there's still good and bad characters, but even the bad characters can hang. They're good enough. Everyone can do damage. Everyone can, you know, do links, and everyone has a decent set of tools that they can implement into their game. So I think it's really fun because you can pretty much pick whoever you want. You don't really have to worry that much if you're playing a character that you won't be able to win with. So that is the list, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I kind of can feel that I'm gonna get some hateful comments for this one. But guys, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge fan of Street Fighter 4. I don't hate the game by any means, but I think it's important for all of us that you kind of don't think about things in purely black and white. It seems like for a lot of people, they either completely love something and they can't accept any criticism of it, or they completely hate it and they get upset when people say good things about it. So I think it's important to kind of be able to acknowledge good and bad things and everything. No game is perfect, and no game is 100% bad with no redeeming qualities. So, guys, again, thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.